Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We have a great show for you today. Ed Hinders joins us to discuss how you can save for retirement. We have birthdays, anniversaries, and we skipped our discussion of the week, but we're going to have a two-parter next week. Stay tuned. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Sponsor of the Wallis Water Cooler podcast is our Wallis Companies benefit provider, bringing you valuable information designed to support your future and overall well-being. From insights on your 401k and retirement planning to helpful resources that go beyond the basics, our benefit provider is here to help you make informed decisions with confidence. We appreciate their continued partnership and commitment to keeping our team educated, empowered, and prepared for what's ahead. Be sure to tune in and take advantage of the knowledge they share, because planning for your future starts with having the right information today.
Hey, everybody. Benjamin here, and you're joining me here at the Wallis Water Cooler, where we are gathering around this water cooler talking about things going on in the workplace. Today, I am joined by Ed Hinders. Ed is the Vice President and Strategic Advisor for CBIZ Investment Advisory Services. Ed.
That is correct.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Very happy to be here.
So can you tell me about what it means to be VP and Strategic Advisor for CBIZ?
It sounds like a pretty interesting job. At the end of the day, it's really working with people. And we're here, of course, talking a little bit about Wallis companies. And so a lot of the interaction I have on a day-to-day basis with your team members would be helping them from a financial advisory standpoint. Think about saving money ultimately and investing money over a long period of time, hopefully to supplement their retirement income at some future date. So at the end of the day, helping people, I think, save money.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
You know, it was a few weeks ago, we asked everybody what their retirement plans were. We got some great feedback, a lot of travel and a lot of full-time RVing and a lot of that, quite a lot of that, comes with the need for savings and some stability of income as we go along. I also was trying to get some research done ahead of this. I already knew what I was looking for, so it didn't take me long. A 2023 article from MoneyWise interviewed Dave Ramsey, and they were talking about how most millionaires are cops and teachers. Right, a lot of them are not, people who earned millions of dollars per year. They write. This is K.E. Gold wrote the article. The top 5 list came out of a survey of millionaires that drew upon answers from 10,000 participants, 79% of which had not received an inheritance. 8 out of 10 invested in a 401k plan, and contrary to expectation, most of these millionaires surveyed didn't have high salary jobs. Instead, 93% said they'd created wealth simply by working hard. And I just love that idea. When you look at people who have retirement savings, it's pretty easy to draw the conclusion 100% of those people saved. Right?
Absolutely.
Just did the step. I'm reminded too of I don't know if you like The Office. I'm a big fan of The Office, and Michael Scott, who is one of the main characters, is, I don't know, he seems like a nice guy, but he's also a bumbling idiot. That's kind of the thing. He's remarking, while he's about to declare bankruptcy, he's remarking, at the end of my life, when I'm sitting on my yacht, am I going to be thinking of how much money I have? No. I'm going to be thinking about my many friends, my children, and my comedy albums. I mean, I have a yacht, so obviously I did pretty well money-wise. And I just think it's a good example of you can't imagine yourself into a comfortable retirement or a secure retirement. You've got to take steps now. And I'm really excited to talk to you about some of those things today.
You do. You have to. And, one of the things I would say that has changed over the years, when I was a kid, when I was young, and I think about my dad or my mom's generation, or I think about my grandparents especially, most of those folks, because I think you just quoted something about saying that it was either police or teachers, I think you were saying, had kind of the most successful retirements.
Yep.
Well, one of the reasons that is, not that they don't save themselves, they do, but most of those professions are part of some sort of a pension plan, what we call a defined benefit plan. So years and years ago, you would find that manufacturing firms or organizations, even like maybe a Wallis or something, we're talking 50, 60, 70 years ago, folks didn't have to think about saving much for retirement because they were in a retirement plan that the company paid for, and they would work their entire career and come out, and they might be able to leave employment and still get maybe 80% of what they were making before they left their job. But over the last 50 years or so, those plans have, for the most part, gone away. And the system then changed to putting the burden, in a sense, on us as individuals to kind of fund our own retirement. And that's where the 401k concept came in, a way for a company like Wallis to sponsor or put in place a pretty easy, simple way to automatically save money for retirement. And then over your lifetime, as you do this, you don't have to put a lot of money away to get a pretty good return. Just on a regular basis, definitely put something away, take advantage of some things we'll probably talk about here in a few minutes in terms of some of the incentives that Wallis provides to do that. And before you know it, it starts to compound and it gets going. The other thing I would say too is sometimes folks will say, what is the most important decade of your work career to get these things started? And, so you've got your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, early career, mid-career, late career. And I will be the first to say that when I was in my early career, I was in my 20s, retirement seemed very far away and I didn't think much about it. And so I didn't engage myself as much in that first 10 years. But statistically, that's the most important decade to get started, because the dollar you save in your 20s now has 30 or 40 years to work for you and compound over a period of time.
Yeah.
So if you wait until your 30s or 40s or even into your 50s or 60s to start, you just don't have as much time on your side. And you can't let the math work for you as well.
Yeah, because you're not missing out so much on the first time it doubles.
Right.
You're missing out on the last time it doubles.
Yes, when it starts to double at higher numbers,
Right.
it makes a big difference toward the end there.
My uncle, blue-collar guy, worked right out of high school at the bottling plant at Coors in Golden, Colorado.
Yeah.
And just set money aside since he was 18. And he went in to talk to his financial advisor, and he said, you don't have to work anymore. And the following Monday, he retired. He was shocked, but
that's good news.
He's a millionaire,
That's
and
good
he
news.
did that just working a blue-collar job.
Yeah.
And one thing I like about our 401k program, my father-in-law has a pension from the government, like you're mentioning.
Yeah.
But that wealth doesn't necessarily grow when he leaves. Right?
Right.
He can't decide where that goes.
Right.
Whereas in a 401k, that's wealth that you can bequeath to somebody.
Your account, that is your money. And just like any other asset, you have a beneficiary designation to say, well, if something unexpected happens, or even if something expected happens at some point down the line, I've got some assets here that can be, transferred to my beneficiaries, my family. I can make those decisions ahead of time, and you have ownership and control over that.
Yeah. So it really is building wealth. And
Excuse me.
hopefully wealth enough to leave to another generation. So we talked a little bit about 401k plan. How does it benefit employees planning for retirement?
Well, I think over the years, I've kind of thought about, what's the thing I like most about 401k plans? And there's many things that I could list here today, but if I was to say what is kind of like the number one reason that I think a 401k plan is a great option for most people, most working people, it is the fact that it is automatic, it is payroll deducted. If you don't see it in your paycheck, you don't spend it. And so you kind of pay yourself first into your own account before everybody else gets paid. And we know Uncle Sam, he automatically takes a certain amount of the check that you're getting. But the idea of kind of putting yourself at the front of the line and saying, okay, I'm going to automatically do this every paycheck, every week, every month, every year. That to me, because it is simple, because if I got a check today at this payroll window and I had to walk down the hall to then deposit into my account whatever I was going to save, between the time I walk from here to here, I'm going to start thinking about all those other things I could spend my money on. And so the idea of it coming out of my paycheck automatically being, aggregated with everybody else, separated from the assets of the company, sent off to my account where it can be invested. It's just so automated and automatic that I don't even think about it. And I get into that habit and I get into that routine, and it just takes care of itself.
Yeah. And then after a year, maybe you look at your statement. You're feeling pretty good about that automatic withdrawal.
Sometimes at the beginning, you're thinking, hey, is this going to mean anything? But all of a sudden, after a year, you get a statement, and you look at that and you say, wow, I didn't realize that I was saving this much money. And
yeah, and I tell you, when I first started putting away for retirement, you mentioned it. You have a lot of immediate needs, right?
Absolutely.
I got to pay the rent. I got to pay the light bill. And a lot of people earlier in their career, maybe they don't have a lot of money to float around. But that first year, when you look at that statement, that feels good.
it feels real good.
Yeah.
And you see where you're at and you say, oh, could I get to this next level? And then once you get to that next level, you say, oh, could I get to the next level? And it gets a little bit, it starts to compound faster and faster and faster. It's hard to believe how fast that can happen. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So who is eligible in our 401k program?
Sure. Well, it's a very broad net that is cast. Number one, I would say there's a couple of criteria. You have to be age 18 to be in the program here. And you have to have at least 1 year under the belt from a tenure standpoint. So the day you're hired, your hire date is the date they're going to start counting. And you go down a whole year from that date. And then at the beginning of the quarter that's after that 1 year date, the way the plan here is set up is that employees are automatically enrolled into the plan at that time. So you don't even have to make an elective decision, but you're automatically enrolled. You're automatically invested. You will know that. You will get notice of that happening. And you are in control. If you say, hey, I don't want to enroll, you can say no. You can reject the offer in a sense. Or you might say, oh, I'm not being enrolled as much as I'd like, and I want to dial that up, or I want to dial it down. So, or I want to do my own investments. So the team member is always going to be in control of their account and how that works. But you have to be 18, and you got to be here about a year to get into the program.
Okay. How does Wallis offer a 401k match? And if so, how does that work?
Yeah, it's pretty common today to see employers provide some sort of an incentive to their team members to participate in these programs. The way I kind of look at it is anything that an employer is sending my way as an employee is, in my mind, that's a benefit. That's a benefit that I'm getting if I work here and I get something. I also see that as part of my compensation package. So I know whether I'm a hourly, person or I'm a salaried person, there's an economic benefit to all of the other things that come my way from my employer. And so here, when we're enrolled, we'll use some kind of simple math, I guess, but when you're enrolled, you have the ability to get a match on the first 7% of what you're saving out of your paycheck. So if you were going to make $100, okay, and you're saying, I'm going to save 7%, which is $7, I'm going to call that the sweet spot. Okay, so I'm saving 7%. And the way the match works, there's a formula. It can get a little confusing sometimes, but at the end of the day, if I'm saving that 7%, Wallis is going to put in another 4.5%. So now all of a sudden, my 7%, my $7 has now turned into probably over $11 just because I got the match. And that doesn't include any of the investment income or anything else that goes with that. So if you wanted to compare that to the rest of the economy out there, I would say the average investment that employers are making today is probably around 3% or less. So I know 4.5% is above average, significantly above average here. So it's like getting a 4.5% raise, technically, on the dollars that you're bringing in. So if you're saving in this program, you want to think about that 7% as the sweet spot. And I know that you're going to be, I think the auto enrollment is actually at 6%. I think they actually automatically enroll you in at 6%. But and that's great, but you could also just dial that up to 7 yourself and say, I want to save 7. And most financial experts, I guess, would say that in our lifetime, we should be probably saving between what the company puts in my account and what I put in my account, somewhere in that 10 to 15% of our income. So you're already, if you're putting in 7 and you're getting 4.5, you're already in that zone. And it's really important.
Yeah. Wow. How does vesting work for that match?
Yeah, it's a word that is thrown out there a lot. You'll get plan documents, things that you get as a participant, and you'll see this word vesting. And I would just say the word vesting, another word is ownership. So vesting equals ownership. But let's start first with the money that I put in. So if I'm putting my 7% or 10% or 3% into my 401k account, I'm 100% vested. That is my money. I own that. Okay. So what we're talking about from a vesting standpoint is the contributions that the employer puts in. So in this case, there's a 3-year waiting period before you achieve ownership of that company match. So if you've joined the company in that first year, and now let's say you've been putting into the program, and you're getting the match, once you're 3 years with the company, you're now 100% vested in that employer match. So there's an incentive there for me to stay with the firm and to, reap the benefit of that. Now, in the meantime, the money's in there and it's working for you. It's invested and it's growing. And so in just a short period of time, and once you cross that 3-year line, that's it forever. That's your 100%. Every dollar that goes in, mine, employers, that I own it.
So I want to get to investments in a moment and what we are able to do within that portfolio.
Sure.
You mentioned, though, auto escalation. What is that, and is that something that's new?
Well, one of the things that in our industry, when I first got into the business many, many years ago, we didn't have the technology that we have today. So everything had to be done manually. Everybody had to fill out a form. And to be honest with you, we all have really busy lives. And some of the best laid intentions we never get to. And so, you might in your own mind think, I've been saving here at 5 or 6 for a period of time. I really should increase that by 1 or 2%, get that up. Good intention, but it never gets done. So this is where really I would call it, I don't want to say the government, but the regulators have come in and said, hey, we're going to encourage employers to automate their plans. We want to auto enroll. We want to auto invest, and we want to maybe auto escalate, because once you come into a plan, if you're coming in at, let's say 6% and you never look at it again, you're probably not saving enough. So the auto escalation is actually a new feature that's actually starting here I think in May of this year, where once a year, each participant is going to get a notification that says, hey, on this particular time, might be in May, I'm not exactly sure what time of the year that'll happen, but at this particular time, the current amount that you're saving is going to go up 1%. And that would happen for a number of years until you got to 10%. At 10%, that stops. But the idea is if we don't keep you on that ladder, if we don't keep climbing that ladder from the 7th rung to the 8th rung to the 10th rung, we're still going to probably come up short at the end. And so the auto enroll is just a feature. Again, participants are in control of that. If they get that notification, they will, and they want to say, no, I don't want that to happen. They just push a button, call a number, and they can freeze that and stop that. No problem.
With auto escalation and, we consider the match, there's an extra cost to Wallis, meaning with auto escalation, with the additional match, somebody's total compensation package actually goes up.
Oh, yeah. So especially like if you were brought in at, let's say, 6%, and you know that the match is on 7%, and you're not in at the full 7, when that auto escalates goes to 7, guess what? You're getting more of the organization's money in your compensation. And so that works.
One of the things that I don't know if this is common practice, but when I joined the organization, even our store managers, get things like bonus money.
Sure.
Right? And that's fairly common in our organization. Most of us are on a BSC schedule and there's a yearly component to that. Most organizations that I've worked with do not contribute 401k match dollars in a bonus check.
In a bonus check.
I think Wallis, I don't know if they're unique, but that was a unique experience to me. Do you know if that's common?
Well, it's all over the board, to be honest with you, as to how employers will do that. As a matter of fact, there's even, most plans start with maybe 80% of it is for every company out there has the exact same approach to this, but the other 20% of the company can adjust it. So in fact, sometimes some companies will say, well, you can't even save into your 401k on a bonus check. Other ones say you can save. And so to your point, sitting here today talking to you, I'm not sure if I can tell you how Wallis handles it, but it is written down in what we call the plan document or the summary that participants can receive and look at and say, okay, if I'm making a bonus, number one, is it going to go 6 or 7% or whatever the number is going to go in? And if it does, am I going to get matched on it? So it just depends on the company, and
Sure.
It's all over the board.
Yeah, I think it's one of the great reasons that Wallis is such a great place to
Yeah.
work for. So if you are in a bonus program, you have an opportunity to squeeze a few more percentage points
Absolutely.
out of that bonus
Yeah.
payout by participating. So I think that's excellent. So is my 401k contribution, I'm sorry, is that money, that the fund that's in that account, is that locked up until retirement, or can participants access it sooner?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think honestly, I think if I was to sit here today with someone in their 20s and say, you need to start saving 7% of your income and we're going to lock it up for 45 or 50 years and you're never going to be able to touch it. I don't know how it doesn't go over too well to think I'm going to lock this money up and I'm never going to be able to. What if I have a financial hardship, or what if a situation comes up? So the rules of the road are and my caveat would be is that someone who's participating in a 401k plan really should look at it from a long-term standpoint. If you're looking to replace the tires on your car in another year, this is not the program for that. You should open up a small savings account somewhere, salary deduct into a different type of savings program. So the idea is this would be the very last place you'd want to go for dollars, because as you can understand, we talked about it a little bit earlier, compounding money over time. Every time you take money out of your plan before retirement, that money goes away in the sense that it's not compounding any longer, it's not growing. So there's really a couple things here that come to play in terms of access. One would be certainly when you retire, you have full access to your funds, And there are some tax considerations when you take money out of a 401k plan, because if you've put the money in pre-tax, haven't paid tax up front on that money, when it comes out, it is taxable. So somebody who's going to be taking out money from a 401k plan in the form of a withdrawal, if they have a hardship or something like that, they can take it out for certain conditions, but it is usually considered taxable income if they've done it on a pre-tax basis when they put it in. And also under age 59 and a half, it's not my rule. It's not the Wallis rule. It's the IRS rule. If you take it under 59 and a half, there's a 10% tax penalty. So if you were taking out $5,000 for some reason, not only is that income, but it's also a $500 penalty because of that 10% tax. So again, you can see that there's kind of messaging there from the regulators and all, you should leave this money alone. But there are definite reasons people, life gets in the way sometimes. You've got to send kids to college, or you've got medical bills, or you've got financial concerns. And so there are specific reasons why folks can take it out. Natural disasters, tornado comes through. Those are all good reasons that we should be able to have access to that money. And sometimes in those cases, they will waive the penalty. But one other approach to taking money out is you can use the money that's in your 401k plan as collateral for a loan that you take from the record keeper and from the plan itself. And basically what happens is you secure your loan with your assets, and you enter into a repayment plan through payroll here at Wallis. And over a period of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years, whatever the term is, you're paying yourself back. You're putting that back into your account with an interest factor that you're paying yourself. So that's another alternative to avoid any of those tax penalties or, taxable income. So when you take a loan, it's not taxable. But again, the caveat there is if you've taken that loan and you've got a 4-year payment plan, and now for some reason you decide to leave the firm and you're exiting, you're terminating your employment, you're moving across the country, take a different job, that loan is due and payable. You got to pay that. And if you can't pay it, it's going to be secured by your account, but that's considered income. And so, you could have a tax issue at that time. So there definitely are ways. We like when situations like that come up, and we certainly would like to counsel folks a little bit. Let's talk about that. So and certainly if it is something they need to do, fine. They do need to be informed.
Mm-hmm. And then there's also the risk of there's no growth there, right? So whatever you're taking out, that's not working.
No growth for you. Yeah. So if the market was up 10% and you have, it's not happening.
Yeah. It's
a
heavy penalty and fee.
Right.
What about moving what's in my 401k? I have the ability to move between selected investment funds. But if I say, hey, I've got a different program and I want to take, after every so many years, take all of this and put it into my own personal Roth, for example. Tell me about how that might.
Sure. That's a big question. There's a lot to it, and I'll try to keep it. So let's talk a little bit about 2 ways that you can put money away into the plan. You can do it on a pre-tax basis, which is kind of what I'm going to use the term traditional. That's the traditional way it had been for years and years. And what that meant is if I was going to put, let's say I was going to earn $30,000 and I was going to put 7% away. And let's just use round figures here. I was going to put maybe $2,000 away into my 401k plan. I did that pre-tax. Instead of earning 30, when I file my taxes, it dropped it down to 28,000. So I saved some money up front on taxes because my gross income is being adjusted. That money grows tax deferred while it's in the 401k all my life. But at some point, Uncle Sam, when there's a retirement or a distributable event, Uncle Sam is standing there and saying, okay, I've never received tax on this. I need to have you start paying me tax on that. So that's one way of putting the money in. The other way, which is newer, I would say, very popular, is putting money in what I would call an after-tax basis. So you just like anything else, it's a deduction out of your paycheck. You're not taking it pre-tax. You pay your taxes just as you normally do. And the money goes in, it's already been taxed, and then it continues to grow tax deferred. But at the time you want to distribute that money down the line, you're going to be able to take that out tax-free. And so it just depends on the certain, tax situation that people have and things like that. But there's a growing popularity to have that money grow tax deferred and then have it tax-free in retirement. So there's a pretty big discussion there. Now, if you're an individual in the plan like you're describing and you say, hey, I want to open up a Roth account or something, well, in the 401k plan, everything is tracked by kind of buckets. So in there, you've got a bucket for the money you've put in, and you might have a pre-tax bucket. Another bucket might be that Roth bucket. So you actually have a Roth account right in you don't have to go and open one at a bank. You've got it right in your 401k plan, the Roth account. You also have a bucket for the employer money, and that's always pre-tax. Okay. So again, with some counseling and talking to a tax advisor, talking to a financial advisor, what's the best way for you personally to save in your plan? At age 59 and a half, if you're still employed here at Wallis, you have something called an in-service withdrawal privilege. So what that means, you can still be working at 59 and a half, 60, 62, 65, 70, as long as you want. And once you hit that 59 and a half, you don't have to prove hardship. You don't have to take a loan. You actually could just pull money out of your plan, maybe pay off your mortgage early, or in your case, you might have suggested that maybe you take that and you want to roll that over into an IRA account, maybe with someone else or some other way of investing. So I will say you've got a lot of flexibility, except when you're actively employed and under 59 and a half, the only way to really pull the dollars out is through a hardship. So you have to kind of prove a hardship situation. So you can't really pull that money out and then start moving it around into other different accounts. But we can also talk about what happens when you leave employment. If you've left employment, obviously, that money is yours. Anything that's vested is yours. And you're able to then say, okay, I can either leave it here with the Wallis plan, let it keep growing. I can move it to my new employer's plan, or I can roll that over into a Roth account, IRA, or a regular IRA. So a lot of flexibility. It's just that every circumstance, I think every individual situation is so unique. It's hard to give a general answer on that.
For those of us who don't have financial advisors of our own, when we're enrolling in the program or maybe making tweaks throughout the year, what resources are available to us as team members of Wallis to understand how and what kind of investment decisions we can make?
That's a great question. So I'm going to identify kind of broadly in like maybe three categories, typically what we find with folks who are in these plans and participants. The first person would be somebody who is very adept, very familiar with investing. This is a person who has accounts already set up somewhere. They understand the difference between a stock and a bond. They understand what a mutual fund is. They're actively involved. They like to read the Wall Street Journal. It's just that personality type in a sense. That's somebody who just, I'll do it myself. That's that first category. I'll do it myself. So my job there for that person is to say, okay, what kind of extra tools do you need to do it yourself? The first thing my firm does is we are responsible, along with the Wallis Retirement Plan Committee, in the selection and the monitoring and even the replacement of the investment options that are in the plan. We have very, very high standards as to what investments are going to be populated in the plan. These are investments that are what we call institutional. There's no sales charges. There's no trading costs. They're good performing funds. They've got good manager tenure. They've got good risk characteristics. So the quality of the investment options are good across the board. And we monitor that with Wallis on a regular basis. And if something does go south, we'll watch it a little bit. But if it's not, coming back, we're going to take that out and put a fresh horse in a sense. So this person who's going to do it themselves, they're going to look at those funds and they're going to create what I'm going to call a recipe. I want so much of this kind of fund, this fund, this fund, and they know how to do it. And that's fine. My job is just really give them the tools, the ammunition, where can you go do research on the funds and things like that. That may only be 15 to 20% of the population. Not that the other part of the population isn't good at it. It's just they don't have time. They're spending time with their kids on the weekend. Nobody has time to sit down and do the study. So they just need somebody to help them. So the next category would be just somebody that says, help me do it. Just help me do it. So our firm, we have an agreement with Wallis that we make all of our financial advisors available to all of your team members here at any time that they want to talk with us. There is no cost, no additional cost for them. And through some Q&A and through some understanding of where they're at and what their goals are, we can come up with that recipe for them and say, you should put 10% of your money in this fund, 15% of this, 20% here, 40% here. So we will give that person the recipe on how to do that. We kind of call that point in time. It's right now. This is point in time, knowing everything we know about you, for example, today. That may not be appropriate 5 years from now. Your life may change, over this next 5 years. So you've got to be kind of coming back to us. We need to be talking with you probably on a regular basis to do that. So that's help me do it, okay? The third category is kind of what I'm going to call the automatic option here, and that's do it for me. Just do it for me. And there's a concept in the market that's been around a long time called target date funds. And so the target date means what is the date in the future that I'm targeting to retire? So if I'm age 30 today and I'm going to work another 35 years, I got to think, okay, I'm in year 2026. I'm going to add 35 years to that. What date is it? Oh, it might be 2060. Seems like a long way away. But that's the fund that I will be put in because it's got 2060. And they all come in 5-year increments, 2060, 55, 50, 45, 40. So once you're put into that fund, and the one thing that Fidelity, who is the record keeper for this plan, knows about you, they know how old you are. And they're going to use 65 as your target date, age 65 as your target. So they're going to put you in the right fund. And when you go into that fund, you can just kind of set it and forget it. It's kind of like a pre-mixed portfolio that is appropriate for your age. If you're younger, you're going to be tilted more to the stock market. If you're late career, you're going to be tilted more to not as much in the stock market because you don't want that much risk. So it's very, very easy once you put that in. And then every 5 years, it becomes a little more conservative. And so it's really on autopilot. And these are very tried and true approaches. We have a great target date fund in this program, highly ranked. And it's the audit. So when you're automatically enrolled, that's the one you're going to go into. Now, that person over here, number one, that we said does it himself or herself, they're going to say, I don't want to be in that. I want to change it. I want to do it myself. And again, you're in control of that. You can do that. So you got a lot of flexibility there.
It's a great product. What we've talked about a couple different investment vehicles. I know there's others, but stocks and mutual funds, broad strokes.
Sure.
What are the differences?
So stocks and mutual funds do have some common characteristics in the sense that a mutual fund is really just a bucket or a basket of stocks. If it's a stock mutual fund. So if you think about, let's just take some companies like Home Depot and Microsoft and Apple and Nvidia. Just you can go down the line of any kind of a company. Applebee's, doesn't matter. You can go out today in the marketplace and you can go to a brokerage account and you can buy those individual stocks, okay? And we really don't like generally to do that in the 401k plans, but there are ways to do it if necessary. So, but generally just in the 401k plan, you're going to look at, for example, let's just use an example of a mutual fund that might be a large cap mutual fund. Well, that fund might have 500 companies in it, or 1,000 companies in it, or 60 companies in it. So it's aggregating all of that into one bucket. So when you're putting your money into that bucket, it's not just going to Home Depot. It's actually being spread among all of those companies in there, which kind of is nice because it gives you kind of an average return. Most of those companies, hopefully they all do well in a day, but some of them are going to be down. But on the average, that bucket of money. So the mutual fund is really, it's the money goes into the market. It's in that fund. And within the Wallis plan, there's probably, I'm just going to, off the top of my head, say maybe 15 to 17 different funds. Or you've got that one target date fund. And every day the market goes up and every day the market goes down. And at the end of the day, at the end of closing, they ring the bell and they say, this is where this bucket is at today. That's what comes into your 401k account that you look at online. It's overnight. The next morning you wake up, you say, oh, I had a pretty good day yesterday. My account went up. So mutual funds are just a way of collectively bringing together either stocks or bonds. Not really cash. Cash is more of just like a money market account or treasury type things like that. But mutual funds are a great way to be in the market without putting all your money on one or two horses, in a sense.
Excellent. So we also talked a little bit about how money grows over time. Tell me, what is compound interest and why is that such an asset in my retirement?
Yeah. So, that dollar that you put in, especially when you're young in your career, and you know that you've got, all these years ahead. So if I'm putting money in today and just for the sake of argument, I make 5% and I had $100 and now it's $105. Well, the next year, I start the next year with $105, right? And if I make 5% on that, well, now that 105 is a little higher number. So now if I make 5 again or 7%, so over those years, that's compounding, and it's almost like, so I'll use your industry trade. It's like putting a little extra octane in the gas. Okay. So that little extra octane, which is what I think compounding really is, it kind of supercharges that and it accelerates the growth faster and faster and faster. An example might be, let's just say you've got a 30-year-old, and let's just say that, I'm trying to remember some math on this, but let's say you just got an entry person. I'm not sure what the starting, but let's just use $30,000 a year of income, just as a bogey here. And if that person was putting, maybe 7% away of $30,000, that's about $2,100 a year they're putting in. Wallis is going to put in another probably about another $1,300 to $1,400 on top of that $2,100. So now you're up to around $3,500 that first year. Let's just say that this person works for 35 years. Now, they never get a raise. Well, you know they're going to get a raise. But let's just say they're still making that 30 and they're still doing exactly that for 35 years. At the end of that 35 years, they would have put in about $85,000. But with compounded growth at maybe, let's just say, the historical average around 7% or so, and the match, that 80-some thousand would have probably turned into, by the time, about $400,000. And that's how quickly, if you have a 30-year-old today that had $100,000 in their plan and they never made another contribution and they earn 7% over that time, that 100,000 turns into over $1 million by 65. So the longer you have, the more accelerated and the more compound growth you're gonna see. So really, and I don't want anybody to say, oh, I didn't start in my 20s, I didn't start in my 30s, now I'm in my 40s and it's too late. It is never too late. It is never too late to get into these programs and capitalize on them. Because every dollar you're putting in there is going to be another dollar in the future you're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We talked about what happens if maybe for some unknown reason, because nobody would willingly leave Wallis companies.
Right.
It's just not happening.
I wouldn't.
It's too good.
Yeah.
But who knows? How can I track my retirement savings progress? And if I need to make one of those, you called it a disaster qualified?
Kind of a hardship.
Hardship. That's
maybe
right.
hardship situation.
If I need to make one of
tornado,
those, what's my first step? Is that through Dayforce? Is that through Fidelity?
That's a good question. So there are some players here regarding your 401k, all really under the auspices of Wallis and the HR department and all of that, and financial. Everybody's kind of looking over everything. My firm is best thought of as the financial advisor and the consultant to the firm. We have a resource for people to call us. I can provide that number. I can provide the email address for that for everybody. Kind of on demand, call us anytime, talk through those kind of things with us. There's another player, which is Fidelity. They're probably a little bit more visible, because that's where your dollars are coming out of your paycheck and being sent to. When you become eligible, even if you're not contributing, I guess I would say, if you decided to not contribute, you'd still want to register on the Fidelity website, because that website is where Fidelity is the service provider for what you're describing. You're going to either want to go online, and there's the first button that says, I want to take a withdrawal and why, and that kind of thing. Or they're going to have their 800 number, and you're going to want to call that number and talk to a representative at Fidelity. You're going to identify yourself to them. I'm an employee, a partner here, or a team member at Wallis. Here's what I want to do. They'll pull your account right up. But assuming, in a sense, Ben, that maybe you've been here a while, you've got some money in the account, you've got a hardship situation, it's really that, notifying Fidelity. Most everything today is pretty electronic. It's either electronic or on the phone. We don't really do much paper anymore. But you can go to that. You can have for the most part, a confidential conversation there with Fidelity. Here's what I need. They're going to walk you through it. Transparency on, okay, well, if you do this is going to happen. There might be a tax. They're going to walk you through those types of things. But then Fidelity as the record keeper, because they're tracking the money that's coming in, they're tracking it in the market, and they're tracking money that goes out of the plan. So they're going to be your first resource to call and initiate that. And they work pretty directly with you. They ultimately, if you got through all the little hoops and hurdles in a sense, they're going to send a check to your home address, or they're going to electronically transfer that over to a bank account or another account like that. So Fidelity is very, very important part of this. We're not talking too much about them today here, but they're a very important part as the record keeper. And not only do they have the technology for you to go in and look at your account, make changes, change your beneficiary, increase my contribution, decrease my contribution. They're also going to be a great portal for resources, short videos on how to invest, what's the difference between a Roth account and a pre-tax? So they're gonna provide a lot of education in that area, and maybe even education on, well, why should this be my place of last resort to take money out of, and hit on that. So fidelity is very important in that question there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So if there's a team member that maybe for one reason or another, later in their career, middle of their career, for example, finds themselves suddenly less secure in their retirement future, change of life, marital status,
Sure.
a lot of things can happen.
A lot of things can happen.
What advice would you give to somebody who worries that there's no point, it's too late?
Yeah, it's a good question because I've had those conversations so many times. I think a lot of times there's that fear factor that is there that sometimes clouds judgment a little bit. It's like, well, I had to give up half of my account because I got a divorce, and therefore it's just over, And I understand that. There's kind of an emotional part of that that's involved, and a fear factor that's involved. But at the end of the day, I mean, I hate to say it this way directly, but you have to kind of take an objective, just look at what the situation is. Okay, I got to regroup here. I've got to start over, or I've got to, work harder at it. There are some provisions under the regulations that allow, especially if you're over age 50, you have the ability to make what are called catch-up contributions in the plan. So everybody that is an employee today, technically, if there are some exceptions to maybe more highly compensated employees in an organization, but technically everybody has a bucket that is open to accept maybe, like, let's call it about $24,500 a year. That's the amount that the IRS says you can put into your account every year. Now, this person you're describing, maybe they've never been filling up their bucket every year. And that might be a challenge to say, okay, we've got to think about raising the amount that you're putting away. If you're over age 50, that $24,500 limit goes up to $32,500. So you do have folks later in life, for many reasons, that are actually, I know it's hard to believe sometimes, but putting that kind of money away in those last 3, 4, 5 years of their career. And it's like a basketball game that you're behind by 12 points. That last quarter, you are catching up if you're going to win this game. So we just have to have good conversations with folks, try to find out, meet them where they're at in terms of their financial circumstances. Sometimes it's not easy to do that, but maybe they can work through that with us.
Sounds like an excellent use case for that advisor function
Yes.
that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's going to be tailored for the individual, but maybe somebody who's at that stage would want something a little more high risk, so there's more growth. Or
right.
Maybe their risk tolerance is very low.
My
risk tolerance is zero.
Well, it's like fingerprints. Every person we talk to, we cannot assume anything. Yeah. Everybody is unique. I might have a 30-year-old who is extremely aggressive. I might have a 30-year-old who's very conservative. I might have a 75-year-old who's very aggressive. So every person that we talk to, as long as there's understanding the trade-offs, that come with taking more risk. Yeah.
After one has passed that 1 year waiting period and they're enrolled in the program, is the 401k like our health insurance where we can only adjust it once a year?
It is really different than the benefits because I know health insurance programs, they have that annual renewal. And we've got all new, either providers or new rules of the road and things like that. I'm not saying that the rules of the road sometimes don't change. It's more for a 401k, but that's coming more from Washington. Generally, they're going to increase the amount you can put away, or they're going to introduce this or introduce that. It's usually an enhancement. But for the most part, participants have pretty much daily access to their account. And so if for some reason you wanted to make an investment change, or if you wanted to change your contribution, or you wanted to do this, or you wanted to do that, you should be able to have access, at least on the website, like 365 days a year. Now, certain things aren't going to get processed over the weekends and over holidays, so might have a 2 or 3 day lag time on something. So, if you put a sell order in on a Friday to move out of this fund to that fund, it's probably not going to show up on your on your website until Monday after the end of the market close or something. So, but no, that's it. You have a lot of flexibility there on changes you can make. Definitely. Yeah.
Well, Ed, any last thoughts?
Yeah. This can be very complicated, but it can be very simple. And I think at the very beginning of our conversation today, you kind of were laying out the idea of doing things in bite-sized chunks over a long period of time. And that's a really good piece of advice. I mean, I think it's, the old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, or how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. I mean, this is something that if you're not involved, pay yourself first, take advantage of this compensation, get to the sweet spot, which is saving 7% at least. Get some help with investments. And then I would say make sure that your beneficiary designations are up to date. That's what is ever on the form or is not on the form is going to be what the record keeper is going to go. They're not going to get in the middle of these things. So life does get in the way sometimes. We have marriages, we have divorces, we have children born. It's good to look at your beneficiary designations and make sure that if something unexpected did happen, that the dollars you intended are going into the right location, the right party, because that does happen every day, and it can be very, very distressing for some folks. But I would just say, as part of Wallis's overall compensation program, this is a very important benefit. And it's one that is also very generous in that the average contribution that's coming into the plan is significantly higher than the average contribution in the marketplace today. So take advantage of that. Don't leave money on the table.
Hey, amen. Don't leave money on the table. Well, there is probably books and classes and whole 7-part episode training
Absolutely.
in this section, but we've covered a lot of ground for the millions of viewers that we have at the Wallis Water Cooler. Speaking of our millions of viewers, several of them, not quite millions, but several of them have an upcoming anniversary with Wallis Companies. Celebrating a first-year anniversary this year, Blue Moa, August Cribbs, Sarah Davis. Celebrating second-year anniversaries, Ashley Bianchi, Christopher Sweet, Stephen Dunn. Andy Light is celebrating a third-year anniversary, and so is Ashley Cujo is celebrating 3 years. Kay Trotter celebrating 3 years, and Jeannie Paulman celebrating 3 years. So is Terry Tanz. Tiffany Bivens celebrating 4 years. Kevin Posey celebrating 4 years. Dakota Aston celebrating 6 years, and so is Khadidra Collins. Howard Monzik celebrating 7 years. Lori Federhofer celebrating 14 years. Holly Mercurio celebrating 17 years. And Toby Stanger celebrating 17 years this year with Wallis Companies. Well, happy Friday and happy birthday to the following people today: Steve Bodie, Alexis Robbins, Izuru Batapolarachi, also known as E, Heidi Darrington, and our own Ed Hinders.
It is.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday tomorrow, Julie Vinoy, and next week to Keith Vielewald, Jonathan Mueller, Jeremiah Carroll, Chris Bapst, Chris Vestal, David Duncombe, and Sandy Spangler. Also, so there is a lot of Groundhog Day birthdays next week. Tyler Smith, Anais Tolbert, Chrissa Evans, all celebrating birthdays on Groundhog Day. Tony Samuel, Deshaun Hayes, Jared Edwards, Mike Doherty, Todd Inges Britton, sorry Todd, John Underwood, and Chad Bicknell. Happy birthday to all of you. And thank you for those of you celebrating your anniversary, your Walliversary, with us here. And I want to thank you all for joining us today at the Wallis Water Cooler. Special thanks today to Ed Hinders. Also, special thanks to Matt Ryan, our technical consultant, Kelly Johnson, and Mike Johnson, our production crew for the day, Alexis Burley, who handles our promotional support, and our executive producer, Rachel Mell. That's all for us, everybody. Time to get back to work. I'm Benjamin Fair. This is Ed Hinders. And I cannot wait to see you again here at the Wallis Water Cooler. Thanks, everybody.